Thank you. And today we have Kate Hardiman, founder of Unified 360, and myself, Rachel Worsley, the founder of Neurodiversity Media, to talk about the question, what are the signs of a neurodivergent unfriendly office and how can this be changed? Kate, would you like to kick us off on this particular question?
Yeah, sure, H. When I first saw this question, I thought it's often not just the big issues like discrimination and bias that exist in a workplace that cause issues for NDers. It's often just the really small things, the day-to-day things, the attitudes that can make a workplace a really tough spot for people who think or interact differently. Some of the things that are more subtle but can still create a really unfriendly environment for NDers, I was thinking include things like rigid routines. So if there's no room for flexible schedules or different ways of working, it can be really suffocating for people who need just a bit of variation to be able to do their work. And often NDers are in that situation. They just want a bit of variation. So rigid routines are really bad for that. And other things are like you can have too much sensory input. So things like bright lights in an office, like those fluoro lights, are awful. And places that have non-stop noise and crowded spaces, all of that can be a lot to handle, especially if you're sensitive to your surroundings. Another thing I thought about was a one size fits all communication. So workplaces that rely really heavily on in-person meetings, and we've all been in those cultures where it's just meetings on meetings on meetings and you're always in rooms. And you know, organizations where you don't offer clear written follow-ups, and that can be a real nightmare if that's not your preferred way to communicate. And the last thing I thought of was lack of awareness. So without some basic understanding of neurodiversity, your co-workers and your boss mightn't understand the unique ways that NDers process information or socialize, for example. So they were the kinds of small, subtle things that can really make an environment unfriendly for NDers.
Yeah, you've really touched on, Kate, quite a few of those points which really resonate with my personal experience, I suppose. I guess there was one workplace where I was in where, lots of stuff was given verbally and I didn't get much follow-up in terms of written sort of instructions, which was really a struggle for me. The
Yeah.
office was a big open plan office and there were no, like literally no spaces where you can go and actually do your work in a quiet space. It was just completely open plan. It was horrible. And I think, that there was definitely a lack of awareness about neurodiversity. And this was like, years ago when I was in this particular workplace, and it was really horrible. And it was not surprising that I didn't survive long in that particular job because of those unfriendly signs. And I've been very lucky to basically be in workplaces ever since where it's been the opposite of that, some clear follow-ups in written form, quiet spaces, remote work, flexible working hours, um, clear communications, through, Microsoft Teams or Slack. Those kind of elements I find have been really helpful in terms of creating that neuro-inclusive environment and that office environment as well. And I guess also just understanding from your peers about how to help you, I suppose, because if we talk about a neurodivergent friendly environment or office environment, it's about also interaction with your peers, I suppose, and how your
Mhm.
peers treat you and interact with you is really important. So having that understanding, the culture of an attitude of understanding and support and providing inclusive support is, I guess, just critical to creating that neurodivergent friendly office. But I hear that, Kate,
Yeah.
you've got some tips in terms of how to create a friendly environment for neurodivergent people. So what are they?
Yeah, I did think of some, and I think you can turn it around. So changing an unfriendly office into a more welcoming one does take a bit of effort, But I did think of some practical steps that our listeners can take in their culture if they want to make the environment more neuro-friendly. And the first thing you can do is embrace flexibility. So mix up the work hours and personal workspace setups. And this is going to help everyone find their comfort zone. And when they're comfortable, they're going to be much more productive. Just makes sense. Secondly, tweak the space. So if you can, try and tone down the lights and create quiet corners and set up private spots where people can go to recharge when they need to. And I'm talking about neurodivergents having to do a lot of masking, often in neurotypical environments where they're camouflaging their neurodivergent traits or they're what we call shape shifting, pretending to be neurotypical. And that is super draining. That is called masking. And often we need to be able to have spots where neurodivergent people can go and recharge when they need to, so that they've got energy to get them through the rest of the day. Thirdly, mix up the messaging. So use a variety of communication methods. So email's a really good one. Detailed documents really help. And there are some digital tools out there that can let people engage how they feel more comfortable. Fourth, learning together. So run training sessions about neurodiversity with your team. That's going to help boost the understanding and the empathy across the team. Next is set clear and inclusive policies. So make sure that your inclusion policies aren't just talk. They're not just these static documents that gather dust. Put them into action and make sure that they're really embedded into the company culture. And lastly, keep the conversation going. Open up the floor for feedback and discussion about how things are going at work with your team, and make sure neurodivergent employees are involved and their ideas are heard and valued. And I think if you can take any or all of these steps, you can shift from being a less than ideal office vibe, to one where everyone feels valued and supported, ready to bring their best performance every day. It's all about creating a space that welcomes all kinds of minds and talents, because at the end of the day, the business is going to reap the rewards, won't it? When it does. It really is a no-brainer, because having managed teams myself, I know that supported staff are happy staff, and happy staff stick around.
Perfect. That's a really great way to end this episode. Thanks so much, Kate.
You're welcome, Rach. Thanks. Bye.